So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whenever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I am talking about the quote-unquote final season of Ted Lasso, and my thoughts on the show as a whole, and why it initially worked, and why the show also needs to end here. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, that if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but heck, you're just not in the right place right now. You don't have enough time wherever you are at to watch the full podcast on YouTube. Then you can also podcast out audibly on Spotify and Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also podcast out visually on my YouTube channel and Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whatever you might be watching or listening to the podcast, if you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also give me some feedback on things to improve on these podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and also leave me some suggestions of topics and stuff you want me to talk about in future videos, and give me some ideas of things to review in future videos as well, in future podcasts. I'd love to have some suggestions of any sort. But anyway, as I've already mentioned in today's podcast, I'm talking about Ted Lasso now that it has supposedly ended, now that the series has supposedly ended. I'm talking about the show as a whole and probably the last season in more detail. So let's get straight into it. Ted Lasso Season 3 finale has now happened. It happened this morning as I'm recording this podcast. I'm now recording on Wednesday, and actually by the time it's come out, it would have been about 2 days old. You know, the finale of Ted Lasso is about 2 days old now. And it is the end to a series that, in my opinion, has been a really wonderful watch. It's been absolutely delightful to watch this series because it's always brought a smile on my face in some sort of way. Just through the comedy, the characters, the situations they get in, and the episodes, and just how well it's written as well. It's one of those comedies that just, you can't help but smile at. And it's one of those shows which just makes you feel good, which is nice to have a change from the likes of Succession. You watch Succession, that's quite a heart-wrenching show. Then you watch Ted Lasso, and it's quite a heartwarming show. And I really love how I've had both of those shows airing around the same time over the past couple of months. And now they both ended on the same week. We had Succession finale on Monday, and we had the Ted Lasso finale on Wednesday. And I really liked the way Ted Lasso ended. I thought it had a pretty perfect end for what the show was. It rounded off the characters beautifully, it rounded off some storylines really well, and also it did have some ambiguity in some storylines, but I think in a way that felt very natural. That ambiguity that you had in certain storylines in the show felt natural, and almost as if, the audience at home can make up their own decisions on what happened to these characters and their relationships and so on. And so, yeah, I thought the ending to the show was perfect. However, I do think Ted Lasso Season 3 is the weakest of all 3 seasons. Saying that, though, I still really enjoyed it. But I'm afraid that if they did another season of Ted Lasso or a spin-off, it would ruin my liking of the show. Not necessarily ruin it, actually, but take down my liking of the show. So, even though I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan, I want the show to end now. And I'd really like it if it did. I'd really like it if they just ended it here and didn't carry it on and left it as it is. Because, like I said before, I thought the ending was perfect. And if you do carry it on, I'm not sure if it would work. It would feel like they're just jumping the shark straight away. It wouldn't feel like there was actually a story to be told. I mean, maybe if they did do another series, they would have a story to be told. Maybe if they came up with a really good idea for a story that, I don't know, brought Ted back, 5 years in the future in the world of the Ted Lasso TV show. But also, like I've already mentioned, it would feel like they're just jumping the shark right there and then, and I really don't want that to happen. And I'm just really happy the way things ended in the show. And also, I really want the show to end because this last season has been my least favourite season of all 3 seasons of Ted Lasso for numerous reasons. I still really enjoyed watching the show. I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that I still really enjoyed the season of Ted Lasso. But the episodes are much longer in the season, and you do start to feel that some of the episodes are baggy, some of them go on a bit too long, some of them drag, and also there's a lot of more messages in this last season of Ted Lasso, and I'm fine about that. Ted Lasso's always had more messages. You know, there's some news outlets writing about Ted Lasso as if it's never had more messages before about what's going on in the world right now. It always has. But my problem with the more messages in this season is the way they're executed. And what I mean by that is certain more messages in this last season of Ted Lasso become the focus of certain episodes a bit too much. You know, like I said before, the previous seasons of Ted Lasso, seasons 1 and 2, had more messages in the episodes. They did. But they always kept the episodes funny though, and they'd have the more messages told in a very Ted Lasso fashion. And this is continues to do that, but it becomes more serious. So I didn't really like how certain more messages became the focus, and became way too much the focus of certain episodes. Like there's one episode in particular, and I think it's episode 6 of this series, and I'm not entirely sure, which focuses on Keely. It focuses on Keely and this inappropriate video that has got out about her, in the public. That has got out her, it's got out to the public, and it has her doing a very inappropriate thing in the video. And that episode, it started off quite well. I remember quite enjoying it for the first 10 minutes. But then the episode started to drag a bit more and became really baggy, and the episode became focused on, how you should really be careful about what you share out to the public on, online devices and whatnot. And I understand that's an important message to tell, but if that episode was in season 1, I think it would have been done in a much more fun way and a much more enjoyable watch. And because it was done in this season, it almost felt like it was teaching you a lesson, and I didn't really like that about it. I mean, that's really only the one episode. That was the only episode this season of Ted Lasso that I didn't really like. I liked all the episodes of Ted Lasso season 1. There was one episode of Ted Lasso season 2 which I didn't like. At least I think it was season 2, which involved Coach Beard on a night out. And yet again, as I thought there would be, there's one episode of this season of Ted Lasso which I didn't like, and that was the episode centered around Keely and this inappropriate video about her that gets out. I liked the idea for the episode, but I think if it was more tight, if it was half an hour episode, and if the more message was done in a more fun way, then it would have been better. I mean, I know it's quite a serious subject matter, that, don't be wrong, I understand that, but still, it felt like it was teaching us a lesson and not necessarily having fun doing it. I mean, it's a bit of a tricky one, that, and I'm not sure if it was really the story they needed to tell. Ted Lasso did. I'm not sure if the creators really, the filmmakers and the creators behind the season of Ted Lasso really need to tell that story to do with Keely. I'm not sure if it was particularly necessary. And also, this series feels like it has a couple of missed opportunities. Like, there's a character that comes in at one point called Zava, and I thought I was going to really dislike the character when he first came in, and then he ended up being really, really funny to watch, and one of the best parts of this final season of Ted Lasso. But then he kind of just leaves the show at one point, and there's not really any finality to what happened to that character. I mean, that kind of is if you look into certain details of the last episode, as I have been doing over the past hour since watching the last episode. But there's no real finality to that character, and it feels like he's a big missed opportunity, the Zava character, because I found him really funny, and if he stayed there, they could have done something really interesting with that character, and they didn't really. And also, I'm not sure that what they did with Keely in this last series as a whole was particularly well thought through. There's some interesting ideas going on with Keely's character, but her storyline with Jack and her romantic relationship with Jack in the show, I felt was just kind of in there for the sake of being in there. I'm not really sure if it added much to the series overall. I like that whole idea, but also I don't know if it was needed in this series, because this last season of Ted Lasso's, already got a lot going on as it is, and then you throw that storyline with Jack, Keely's girlfriend at one point, and it just feels a bit unnecessary. And a lot of the story with Keely doesn't feel like it's really been well thought through in this last season. I think they could have done something better with Keely. I still enjoy watching that character in the series, mainly because of Juno Temple and the way she plays that character, but, there are some problems with that character in the series, just in the way her character arc has been written, and the way relationships with her being written in this last series as well. And, this series does become a lot more serious than the previous 2 seasons of Ted Lasso. The first season of Ted Lasso had its serious moments, don't get me wrong, it did. Like any comedy does, like The Office did, like Parks and Recreation did, like most comedies in this sort of ballpark do. But the thing is, that first season also had this perfect balance of really fun and exciting and energetic and just really hilarious moments. And the second series had a lot more serious moments, though. There was one episode with a funeral in the second series, which was very serious. But at the same time, though, they always kept it fun. This series of Ted Lasso, I do think, is more serious than the previous 2, and is notably so. And sometimes that begins to be its downfall. And, I still really enjoy the series. I really, really did. But I also think that the series needed a bit more comedy in there. It became more of a drama. And sometimes I wasn't sure whether I was meant to laugh at something or whether I was meant to find it really serious just because of the balance. I'm not sure the balance between the comedy and seriousness in this quote-unquote final season of Ted Lasso, because I'll talk about that very shortly. We don't actually know this last series. I don't think the balance is totally there like it was in the previous 2 seasons, or more specifically Series 1 of Ted Lasso. And I do think now that the show is starting to outstay its welcome. Like I said, there's still so much to enjoy in this last series, and it sounds like I'm criticising it a lot. I'm really not. I really, really, really like this last series of Ted Lasso. Well, the supposedly last series of Ted Lasso. But at the same time, though, I do think that some of the plot lines are becoming a bit repetitive, and I do think that the show's becoming a bit baggy now. And, I do feel like if they ended the show here, it'd be the right time to end it. Do the Office thing, not the American Office thing, the British Office thing, where you end the show after 2 seasons and 2 Christmas specials. That's what the British Office did, and it worked perfectly with The Office. It worked perfectly with Extras as well, which was done by the same people. Do the British TV show format where you end it after 3 seasons at a push. And yeah, if that's what happens, then I'll be really happy about that. But that's a bit up in the air, because as I already mentioned briefly, this might not be the last season of Ted Lasso. Because even so, Jason Sudeikis, who plays Ted Lasso in Ted Lasso, he plays the titular character, even though he's come out and said that this is definitely the last series, had a warning to him, and I think that's an M, not sure if it is an apology if I got that wrong, who plays Rebecca, and Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent, one of the best characters on the show, if not the best character. They've both come out and said that it might not be the end. And I am hoping that they are just being hopeful about the show's future, and maybe don't realise that this is the way to end it, because like I've already mentioned, this is how the show should end, and I really hope it is the end. I really hope that they come out now and say there's going to be no more Ted Lasso. If they do a spin-off, maybe it'll work, but even that, I'm not going to be too excited about. I'd be a bit hesitant about that. I mean, I'd probably watch the spin-off. Like if they did a spin-off on Roy Kent, I'd probably watch it, but I'm not going to be too enthusiastic about it, because this is how you should end the show. It really is. And I know Brett Goldstein, I know Hannah Warrington, and I know there's other cast members that want to continue this series, but sometimes you're just going to let things, you got to let it end on a high. You've got to finish on a high, and don't carry it on too long that it starts to outstay its welcome. And I do think that might happen if the show was to carry on in some sort of capacity. But, like what he mentioned, this last season of Ted Lasso is just great still. I had such a treat watching this every week. And I know there's been some people against this last season of Ted Lasso. Honestly, I just feel people nowadays want to complain about something, and they just point at a show that's been out now for a good couple of years and go, let's complain about that because it's starting to get old. That's what I feel some people are like nowadays, and just complain about things for the sake of complaining about things, because lest we forget, Ted Lasso came at this time. I mean, I didn't watch it when it initially came out, but I remember hearing all this buzz about it when it initially came out, during the pandemic. I think it initially aired in 2020. And it came at a time when I think everyone needed something to laugh at and, something to grin at, and Ted Lasso provided that entertainment for people. And, I know that the pandemic has, well, touch wood, we've got the pandemic behind us now for the most part. I mean, saying that, who said what's going to happen in the next couple of years? But assuming that the pandemic is very much behind us now, it seems like people have turned against this show, since the pandemic has pretty much died down. And I feel that maybe people are back to just being pessimistic all over again. I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking things a bit too much, but I don't know, maybe there's something there, how people fell in love with the show when the pandemic was going on, and now that the pandemic has, is not as prevalent as it once was, people have taken a bit of a dislike into this show. And so, yeah, I don't know, maybe there's something there, maybe there isn't. And also, one other thing that I really want to say about this show is how it just has been such a wonderful watch, though. I mean, there's so many other things I want to say about the show, really. I mean, this last series, it's not been as funny as the previous 2 seasons, Ted Lasso, but it's still been really funny to watch. And also, it's provided me with a lot of joy every week, and I love how they finished off this series. And I still love how it's one of those shows which you don't need to know about football or have any interest in football, or have any interest in football to watch. I can't stress this enough. I do not care about football. I have virtually no interest in football whatsoever. And this show is a show about a football team, and yet I still enjoy it so much, because in the end, it's not about a football team. One thing I didn't talk about in that Ted Lasso video I made about a month or two ago now, I made a video about Ted Lasso in the first 2 seasons about how much I loved it. And one thing I didn't really mention in that video was how the show is about family. It sounded a bit Fast and Furious. It's all about family. It's all about family, and I need to save my family. That's why, I'm making it sound a bit Fast and Furious there. But no, it is all about a family end. It's all about this dysfunctional family within Richmond Football Club, which Ted Lasso manages to bring together. And without going into too much detail, the way they end the show really fits that sort of metaphor, really nicely. At least I think it does anyway. And, I mean, there isn't really much else to say about this series I haven't already said. It's just utterly wonderful to watch, and it still is. It still is, in my opinion. It's still a great show. I'm just hoping it ends now. I'm hoping this is the last season of Ted Lasso, even though that's a bit up in the air. I'm really hoping it is. And if it is, even though it's not the best season of Ted Lasso that they ended on, it's still great. It's still got so much fun about it. Sure, there's one episode of the season of Ted Lasso which I didn't like, but there was one episode of season 2 of Ted Lasso which I didn't like. And this series still has emotional moments and moving moments which work. It's still well written. If I'm being honest, it's a bit, it feels like it's been, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, it feels like it's been written a bit too much, if you get what I mean. Like, it feels like it's been worked on a bit too much. And there was reports about a year ago, before the show started filming again, before season 3 of Ted Lasso started filming, that Jason Sudeikis, who became the showrunner of Ted Lasso with season 3, said he wanted rewrites on all the episodes. And you do feel that a bit. You do feel that some episodes are perhaps rewritten too much. I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but at the same time, there are moments in the show which I do feel are very, sometimes unnecessarily emotional. And, it's got its problems last season, but I need to stop dwelling on its problems, and I need to stop talking about how just a joy it was to watch this final season. And it's sad that it's potentially the end, but I'm happy that this show has happened. I'm happy that it continues to be great, in my opinion, and I'm happy that, it delivered on its finale as well, because some comedies don't. Some comedies do not have great finales, and yet this finale was pretty much perfect. It was a perfect finale to an otherwise, great final season. I'm not going to say this final season is brilliant, but it was great, though. It was a great final series with a lot of really, really great moments. And yeah, I really did like this last season of Ted Lasso. I don't know if I would love this last season of Ted Lasso, but I loved the finale, though. I don't know if I'd say I loved the last season, but I definitely did love the finale. And, yeah, it's still great in my opinion. It's still great. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Ted Lasso Season 3, I'm going to say that it's a 8.5 out of 10. You know, I gave the first 2 seasons of Ted Lasso in my first Ted Lasso review from about a month or two ago. I gave those first 2 seasons a 9 out of 10. And, you know, this season is a step down, at least in my opinion. But it still works. It still does. But it needs to end now. It needs to end. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm not saying that, God, the season didn't work. It needs to end. No, I'm saying that the season did work and that's why it needs to end. I'm saying it, you know, that way. I'm saying the British comedy format way. Do 3 seasons and then out at a push. You know, do 3 seasons at a push and then leave it behind. But it's been a delightful time watching this show. And I still just love spending time with these characters as well. There's one thing I haven't really mentioned about why I really enjoyed this series. I still enjoy spending time with these characters. I mean, there's loads of things I haven't mentioned about the last series. I love what they do with Nate, actually. I love what they do with Nate in the show, because by the end of season 2 of Ted Lasso, you hate Nate. And then in this season, they try and make you feel emotion towards him. You're like, why are you doing that? But also, it's really good writing, because you're not sure how to feel about Nate. And not to go into too much detail, in case people haven't seen the show yet, although if you're watching this, I'm going to guess you have seen the show. But even if you haven't, you know, not to go into too much detail, I love how in this series you don't give him a straight redemption arc. You know, he doesn't really have one scene where he goes, I am redeemed. He just kind of gets redeemed, but at the same time, though, it feels very natural. It feels like something that would happen in real life, you know? Just the way Nate's character arc gets played out. And I really love the way they ended that character. And also, I really love the way they ended Rebecca's character arc in this series. I love all the character development as well. I love seeing that how all the characters have changed since season 1. You know, you look at somebody like Trent Krim, who was pretty much just a like 2-minute character in every episode from series 1. He was barely in season 1, and then in season 3 he is one of the main characters. And yeah, I love how they've done that. I love how they've made Trent Grimm this really funny character at times. I love how they do touch on serious subject matter in this last series, but still do it in a Ted Lasso fashion, although I don't always love how they do that. But there are some instances like how one of the footballers is gay in this last series. I love how they treated that in this season of Ted Lasso. And also, I love just spending time with these characters and seeing how they developed over time, and I still find them all funny to watch. I still just really enjoy watching this show. You know, it has this really great feeling with it. And even though this last season of Ted Lasso, this quote-unquote last season of Ted Lasso, because as I'm recording this review right now, it hasn't officially been announced that it's ending. But if this is the end of Ted Lasso, I love how it feels like an end, and I love how it ended everything. I love how it finished this story, and I really hope that that's it. And I mean that in the best way possible. I really do. I mean that in the best way possible. I hope that that's it for these characters, and if it is, I'd be more than happy about that, because this show was pretty great overall. In fact, I would say it's fantastic overall. And this last season disappointed a little bit, but not massively, because now the more I look back at it, the more I look back at it, I think more about the perks of last season rather than the negatives. And my God, there was a lot of perks. There was a lot of positives, and yeah, it was an all-round great series that had a perfect ending to the show, in my opinion. A perfect ending. And, you know, that's enough for me. A great comedy that I would definitely rewatch in the future, and one that I hope has ended now. I hope this is the end for Ted Lasso, because, as I've already mentioned numerous times in this review, it's a perfect end for this show. It really is. At least it was for me. And so, all in all, Ted Lasso Season 3 was the perfect end for this show, and I hope it's ended now, and I really enjoyed this series as well. And for all those reasons, for all the reasons I've mentioned in this podcast today, I'm going to say that this final season of Ted Lasso is a 8.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for the podcast for today. Hopefully, you enjoyed this podcast, and hopefully, you enjoyed the quote-unquote last season of Ted Lasso as well. And if you did, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But also, if you didn't enjoy it, let me know your thoughts as well. I understand why some people might not. I understand, some people's issues with the last season, but, I still had a great time watching it, and it still felt like a treat to watch overall. But, let me know your thoughts on Ted Lasso as a whole in the comment section below. Also, thank you as always for watching or listening to the podcast, and if you haven't yet, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course. And also, over the next week, I should say over the next week, I will have another review coming out, then another video coming out that's going to be a non-review, and it won't be a podcast of any sort, but I'll have another video coming out as well after that. But then I'm taking a bit of a break, just about a week break off YouTube, because I'm taking a bit of time off because it's the summer and I just want a bit of time off now. But until then, guys, thank you as always for watching or listening, and I suppose that's it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.